So thank you so much, firstly, to Aravinda and Annie for the opportunity to be up here today. They call it a masterclass, which is maybe too much of a compliment, but today I'm going to dig into the 11FS marketing playbook and how we have been media-led in our approach and how we continue to measure performance on our content 8 years in. But first, who am I to even be telling you this? So just to introduce myself, so I'm Laura. I'm Director of Media and Marketing at 11FS, but I'm very proud to have helped build this brand over the last 7 years into the recognisable entity it is today. I run the team now, but I've also been in the trenches as a media producer and a content creator over the last 7 years, making the content, analysing it, improving it, trying new things, really moving forward with this B2B brand that speaks with a B2C voice. With our podcast, Fintech Insider, as the keystone in our marketing. But let's take a quick rewind. So who are 11FS? So on paper, we are a boutique financial consultancy aiming to change the fabric of financial services. We help banks, fintechs and brands become truly digital and offer the best possible products, services and experiences to their customers worldwide. So you might be thinking, well, that's great, Laura, but how does a media-led approach help a financial services consultancy? Well, we have built a media brand alongside our business that is our not-so-secret weapon for brand recognition and marketing cut-through that helps us achieve this mission. And we have invested in a full-scale media network, starting with Fintech Insider and moving into sister podcasts, videos, events, written content, everything from social media videos to full-scale documentaries. And that shows the sheer breadth, scale and ambition of our marketing and media efforts. And obviously all of this brand building drives recognition in the industry. It opens doors for us, for our sales teams and other business lines to capitalize on. And all of that breeds results. So here is a snapshot of some of our data and what our persistence of building this media network leads to. 22 million downloads of our Fintech Insider podcast and counting. Fintech is a niche industry. It may not feel like that in a room of all of us today, but it is. And we are a B2B brand, so we are a niche within our niche. And yet we can still pull these numbers. And that shows the value of brand and audience positioning to drive growth. But numbers alone aren't everything if they don't drive business value. So how does this actually help 11FS? Obviously, as all of us marketers in the room will know, the role of marketing is to drive the growth of the business. And we do that by growing the brand and generating leads. And obviously marketing and media sits very much in the grow the brand camp, but you would be surprised at how much media itself generates leads for the business. And our approach has always been to build a media company around what we stand for, which was an ingenious move from our co-founders right at the beginning. They invested in media as a marketing tool. They started a podcast to tell the story of the brand and the industry and their passion for change and focusing on storytelling and thought leadership rather than more traditional marketing methods. And at a stroke, they created a sub-brand, an audience, and also a first mover advantage in the fintech podcasting space. So I joined the company about a year after it started, and even then, in 2017, when I was trying to book people onto the podcast from more traditional organisations, I had to explain to people what a podcast was before they would join it. And now everyone has a podcast, and so our challenge has changed to be to make sure that we can maintain that leadership position and that first mover advantage. And our goal is to always add value to our audience. We have built a media brand to establish our point of view in the industry, but it's not a sales channel. That is very, very important to me personally when I'm making content. Media always shows. Marketing tells, but media shows. We want to start conversations. We want to engage people. We want to ask questions, create conversations. Our media is not to just tell people how great we think we are. It is to get everyone involved in the content. It is not a broadcast channel. So to summarize, this is how we use media as the keystone in our marketing playbook. This is kind of the mission statement for media, as it were. So we add value to our global community of financial services professionals by producing and distributing authoritative, provocative, and human content and experiences about the future of financial services. It's a lot of words on there. Authoritative, provocative, and human. I haven't mentioned those yet, but what are they? They are our content values. And what that means is that they are sort of the tent poles of our content creation. We are always keeping these in mind. They are sort of the rate setters for our brand and our tone, and they do not have to be in balance, but they are levers to pull. So what that means is, obviously, depending on the content, you can be more provocative or not, you can be more human or not. But what they mean to us is, for example, I'm not going to read all of this to you, don't worry, but human means speaking with a real human voice, not a corporate spiel. Building human-to-human connections and rapport with our audience, and also telling the human stories and the impact of the changes to the industry, telling the why behind the what. Provocative is super important to our brand. As you may know, it's quite a punchy brand. And so provocative is how we stand out. We challenge ourselves to say, well, what are we saying that's different? What are we saying that's new? What are we saying that maybe some brands are afraid to say? And we cannot challenge ourselves to change the fabric of financial services if we don't point out how we would like it to be different. And finally, authoritative. This one's really important. So using our incredible in-house expertise to add value to our audience, but also importantly using the power of network to curate conversations when we don't have that expertise in-house ourselves. For example, if we're talking about the growth of fintech in Africa, we will go to that market and bring the thought leaders into the conversation with us rather than trying to make our best guess from London. And all of this makes our content authentic. It makes the people on it recognizable. And so when people are having business conversations, the clients already feel like they're familiar with them before they even start. And so with all of this, how do we decide what content to make? Well, X marks the spot, essentially, between what we'd like to make, what we're interested in, what our audience is interested in, and what works for us as a business. And sometimes maybe X might skew into one bucket or the other, but it should always have overlap in all three circles. But content for content's sake is never the answer. It has to have an audience, and you have to invest in building your audience as much as building your content. And it's not enough to build content just once or twice. You have to do it consistently, and you have to do it often. This is a snapshot of our kind of cadence on a weekly, monthly, regular basis. It is quality over quantity. I'll let you read the stats for yourself, but it's a lot. We call it our media machine for a reason. You have to have a lot of discipline and focus to keep this content churning out as regularly as it is. But importantly, it should never, ever feel like churn. Every piece must be unique, and I'm really passionate about this. My team will tell you that I have banned the phrase business as usual from our team's vocabulary because I just don't believe it's a thing. Every single piece of content should be unique and should be treated accordingly. If you are feeling like it is churn, like it is business as usual, you're doing it wrong. Every single piece must be unique with specific distribution ideas baked into it to reach the audience that you want. And for us, our audience is so important to us. Fintech Insider is not just a podcast, it's not a marketing channel, it's not even a brand. For us, it is a community that we have built alongside our business, and we are very, very proud of that. And we never, ever take it for granted. And we make it our mission to engage and reward that community by keeping the audience top of mind in everything that we do, building distribution into the content creation process, as I was saying, and finding the audience and talking to them where they are. So not dragging them to where we are, but finding out where they are and talking to them accordingly, which means constant evaluation of what we're doing in our marketing practices. Are our audience more skewing more to TikTok and not Twitter? Or should we be talking to them on LinkedIn? Is that where they are? Continually evaluating that. Ensuring that our content is a dialogue and not a monologue is also really important. So making sure there are always opportunities for people to join in the conversation, to ask questions, to engage. And also bringing people value via events, both in person and virtually. I don't know if any of you have been to any of our events, such as our Fintech Insider After Dark event, but that is our way of kind of bringing the community together. And it is our pleasure that sometimes business connections are made in that room that have nothing to do with us. People make business, they get hired, etc. It all happens at our event, and our privilege is that they remember that they did it at our event. And in doing so, we also access the audience of other brands that are in the room, access the network of people who are on our content, and they share that content, and essentially the audience sort of gets bigger and moves in sort of ever increasing circles. So what does that mean in terms of measurement? Well, media can influence the marketing funnel. So we can help move our audience through that marketing funnel as they get more brand familiar, and we can track and measure at every stage the right buyers down the funnel at the right time. Obviously, I'm cognizant of the fact that not everybody who listens to our podcast is going to be a client, but many will become so. And we can track our audience through general awareness, through to engagement, all the way to loyalty, retention, and measure those with the relevant KPIs as we go along. And ultimately, all of this audience, when nurtured into the right way, translates into business, which ultimately is the end of the game. So it might look like a content machine from the outset, and it is, churning out podcasts, events, videos, articles, etc. But what that means and what it gives us is this brand awareness. It gives us this cut through. It gives us business insights of what people want to talk to us about. It gives us industry insights about what they're talking to each other about. It gives us sales enablement of our salespeople going into conversations, and also it just gives us inbound, quite frankly, which is always a benefit. Product marketing, sponsorships, partnerships, all of this is business. But as good marketers, we obviously measure everything, but we are moving away from measuring the individual elements for what they are. So not just measuring podcast downloads, article reads, video watches, etc., but also measuring them against these. Against, are they bringing us ROI? Are they delivering business value? And if not, what can we do to make them so? So, while keeping an eye on the numbers is always good, just knowing what they say and how your properties are performing isn't enough. It's what you do about it that matters. So in our team, we focus on the so what and what's next. And what that means is, what are you going to do about the numbers, what the numbers are telling you. So if something's good, how do we double down on it and make it better? If it's not good, how do we switch it up? How do we change it? How do we improve things? What are our next steps? And for us, there's 4 main ways we do this. So firstly, constant evaluation. So looking at things on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, so we always know the performance of all of our properties. And with that, you can then make your next steps, which for us, we call balancing art and science. Essentially, as marketers, as content creators, we are very creative people, and so keeping things in balance and making data-driven decisions allows you to focus your energy in the right places, being creative with purpose, and hopefully future-proofing your ideas so that you can kind of almost guess at what will work. Coupled with that is staying restless, so finding the improvements. What are the 1% improvements you can make on every piece of content, every event? How can you make that better than the last one, sorry. But also experimenting. Everything that I showed you on that slide of all the media properties was at one point an idea. We had to put it out there, we had to test it, we had to try it before we developed it into a thing. And so we are always trying to find those new ideas. And finally, being unafraid to learn in public. And what that means for us is doubling down on that kind of very transparent brand permission that we've built to tell our audience if something doesn't work, if we're going to roll back a newsletter, if we're going to put a podcast on ice for the time being, and focus on what does work. And so I think sometimes as content creators, you can feel like once you start something, it's sort of like an albatross that you have to carry around and you have to keep going with it all the time. You don't. I think you have to make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons. And in summary, if there's something I can leave you with, is that building a media network is tough, but it is so rewarding. Your content should always be innovating and changing, and to do this, you have to take a few risks. But critically, you do not have to do the same thing forever, and you shouldn't. Evolution is key. So look at the data, look at what it's telling you, and question, so what, and what's next? Okay. I don't know if we have time for questions.
I think I would find it very interesting to have some questions. Do you have any questions for Laura? Yes, amazing.
That was great, thank you. I just wanted to ask, how long roughly did it take from kind of starting with this concept of building a community and having that filtered through to kind of business value eventually to be able to see that link?
Pretty swiftly. So how quickly did we build business value? I think obviously, we were a bootstrap startup at the beginning, so any value is business value pretty much straight off the mark. But I think we could see it's sort of like a flywheel. Once you get it turning, it starts to kind of run away with itself. And so within a year, our audience size was in the thousands. Within a year, it was in the 20,000s. We were able to put on events. We were able to branch out into things. And also, frankly, we were making business off the back of it. So, we'd either feature people on the podcast that then turned into our clients, or the other way around. So people would hear the podcast and then come and ask us for work. So I do think we were slightly lucky with the whole first mover advantage thing in 2016. But yeah, it was quite rapid, to be fair.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you had any tips for research, like how you actually keep yourself kind of authoritative and informed. Because it's something that's hard for us internally. Like some of our spokespeople might be out of the field for a few years now, they're working for us. How do you kind of keep yourself up to date and authoritative, like consistently on these things in different markets?
It does take a commitment, and I think partly that is actually the role of our producers, our production team, is doing a lot of that research. It is finding out what the industry is talking about, finding out what people are saying to us, but also just like devouring content, reading headlines. I mean, it does help for us that we have a weekly news show, which, in the creation of which that keeps us, on top of all the news. But it is also a commitment from the company and the people that we're going to put there as thought leaders, that they do their homework too, and they stay kind of top of their game. If we're going to put them, on a sort of public platform every week, we can help them. We can provide insights and kind of speaker notes and that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's them holding the microphone. So there is a certain amount of accountability that goes with that as well.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Give me 1 second while I awkwardly walk towards.
Hi. So humanity, you mentioned, is one of the sort of key traits as differentiators for your brand, and it's something that's not necessarily super common in financial services. My question is around kind of how you manage to bring that out authentically. Is it about hiring for personalities? Is it sort of filtering down from David? Like, how do you operationalize humanity?
That's an interesting question, because I think it is part of our culture that we allow everyone to be themselves. And I know sort of obviously every company says that, but what I mean is, like, when we're putting them on a podcast, giving them a platform, they're allowed to have their own opinions. They don't have to have the 11FS opinion. And what that could do is mean that two people from 11FS on the same platform could disagree. And that's fine, so we're not trying to make everyone read from the same hymn sheet. We're allowing them to bring their own voice, their own personality, and their own opinions and expertise to things. And so I think that kind of like freedom and transparency on opinions and kind of content creation allows us to have that. And I think generally just in terms of the spokespeople that we put on our content and the people that write it and create it, they're just really passionate about what they do. And so so if we're going to hire anyone or train anyone for media and that kind of thing, that's what we'd look for, that real passion for the industry. So you might notice that some people feature in some content and not others. That's deliberate, because we're focusing them on the areas that they are the most expert in or that they are most passionate about, so that we really can bring that out of them in the best way and, as you say, the most authentic way, so it doesn't feel manufactured. Leo?
Okay. Another question. Okay. The last question. And then I'm going to...
yeah, sorry, I don't want to hold up the next panel.
Switch up the program a little bit, but you'll see what will happen.
In one of your previous slides, the last bullet point was about growth hacking and collaborating to steal or take in the audience of other brands.
Yeah.
Please can you expand on that?
Yeah, so it's more about that kind of building network and building community. So, for example, if I went on your podcast, I would probably share the fact that I've come on that podcast. So your podcast would be talked about on my network. My network would see that and, kind of builds and builds and builds. So it's not, I guess growth hacking sounds like quite a negative term in terms of like audience hacking, but it's actually just sharing, I suppose, and kind of building those Venn diagrams between people's networks and people's brands, and sort of celebrating what's out there in the industry, basically.
Thank you.
No worries.
Amazing, thank you so much. Laura, thank you.